Alright, so let's get acquainted with things here for a second. First off, know that these objects need to be lit a little bit more. So if you go to Game Object, you can go Create Other and create a directional light. Let's look at orientation. Okay, right now this object has local rotation or local orientation. So if I go to global, I can now rotate it around. And when I go back to move, you can see that it has this thing where it's pointing down. Okay. If I go back and click on this, now it's pointing this way. So there's global and local. Global is the orientation within the scene. So the Z is in this direction in the scene. Local is the orientation based upon the object. So this is local down. So know that that one is there. Also, every once in a while, there is a nice center pivot over here. Okay, these meshes that are ending up in here, each one of them has to have some kind of colliding mesh. So, and take, for instance, building 1. Okay. This is the properties of it. So I have animations, bake, materials. This is the big broad spectrum thing. So if it had a lot more properties than we're going to be looking at here, we're not really going to be using these too often. Okay, not within this series. I'm just kind of giving you a watered down impression of pipeline. Okay. Now, the building here versus the building up here, this one only has animations. What we're going to have to do is mount collision objects onto these. So basically, if I walk through the geometry, I can't walk through. It stops me. And I guess to illustrate this, I have to pull out the coup de grace. So the coup de grace is located in standard assets, character controls. There's a third person and first person. I'm going to use first person right now. Put them right here. And if I hit play, watch what happens. Okay, so this is going to be my game. You can see right now, here's game. If I hit play, I can now rotate around. And I can go like this and walk right into the geometry. I can walk around the geometry and I can walk through the geometry. But the palette looks nice. We're treating this scene as an aesthetically pleasing scene. It's not going to have an interior of the building to walk around in. We're just learning how to pipeline things in. But it would be nice so I can't clash through the geometry. So in order to fix that, I go to the building. And I go into something. Hold on. It's coming back to me. Mesh collider. There we go. Component physics mesh collider. I will say yes. And then it's going to ask for a mesh. And look, if I click this button, it'll have a bunch of different meshes. In fact, I want this mesh because it has doors and windows. Okay, let's hit play. and now I can't run in or walk through the geometry. You can see that in my bottom right hand side, and you can also see it in the preview window there in the top. The pill can go inside now, like that. And you notice once he's inside, he can clash through, because what's really keeping him inside is normals. Okay, so normals are facing in one direction, not both directions. So he can't enter, but once he's in, he can get out. Notice the window's blocking him. See that? I can't exit right there. I can only exit through the geometry anywhere but the window. Alright, so that's the basics upon that. Notice he is also the correct size. I did that on purpose. You know, this whole building was built in the intention of being the correct size for the first person player here. We learn about scale based upon objects in like another class called world building or fundamentals to gaming. This is all about texturing. Okay, so there's that in a nutshell. Now, keep that in mind. Every object will have to have some kind of collider so you don't go through it. In this case, the window. Now, that's a double-walled object. But still, I like to put a physics mesh collider on it. And that's window large. And then there's that palette. Now this one is just a box. So I might be able to get away with just doing a box collider. So let's, instead of mesh collider, we can now right click and remove that. I can go in here and add a component, physics box collider in. And you can see the little box. Okay. So on the actual object here, palette, I have box collider. I can state the size here. So I can make that a little bit bigger by clicking and dragging. And I can make that in Y a little bit bigger. I can rotate around to find out if I'm doing the right axes or not. Just like that. And I can also center it. So there. Now, that's the key right there. See, having a collider, colliders are really expensive as far as memory is concerned. So if you can get away with just using a box collider on things, do it. But if you have unique windows and doors and stuff, you're going to have to use the meshes version of a collider. Okay, the last one is a window. That one could also be a box collider if you want. Or I'm just going to use the mesh collider. Now look at that. I have to have that one for each one of these. Right? So each one of them will have to have that. Alright, once you get everything set up, that's basically the 101 of dealing with colliding and manipulating around the scene a little bit. We're going to get into it more, but that'll get your feet wet and give you something to do as far as now I got to go in and assign all my colliders and everything else. Then in the next video, we're going to kind of look at another thing that we're going to have to do.